In Port Charles, a city constantly defined by shifting alliances, buried secrets, and emotional landmines, this week unravels a string of seemingly disconnected moments that ultimately tie into one another with breathtaking emotional and political consequences. From an unexpectedly poignant meeting between two legacy characters to the tightening grip of family power dynamics, General Hospital reminds viewers that nothing is ever simple, especially when it comes to love, loyalty, and survival. The quarter began quietly enough, with Emma Scorpio Drake arriving at General Hospital for a research rotation under the mentorship of her grandmother Anna's former colleague. Though returning to Port Charles had never been her long-term plan, Emma felt drawn back by the magnetic pull of home and, perhaps, a need to rediscover her identity beyond the pristine confines of medical school abroad. Her re-entry into town was meant to be subtle, almost private, until fate had her literally collide with Giovanni Cerullo, a young, violin-playing enigma who had only recently begun learning the truth about his own tangled family tree. Their meeting was anything but conventional. Emma, rushing out of an exam room with a tablet of patient notes, collided with Gio in the hospital corridor where he had been waiting for an appointment with a neurologist, having experienced dizzy spells following a recent stress-induced panic attack. In that instant, time seemed to momentarily bend. Both startled, both awkward, and yet both visibly curious about the other, their encounter was charged with unspoken recognition, not in the sense of knowing each other, but in understanding something deeper. A shared legacy, a common ache. Neither of them knew then how closely their stories would begin to intertwine, or how their futures would be quietly rewritten by the emotions ignited in that brief yet meaningful moment. Elsewhere in Port Charles, Ava Jerome found herself in a familiar role, dispensing wisdom she wished someone had given her years earlier. Seated across from Nina Reeves at the Metro Court, Ava couldn't help but observe her friend's fraying composure. Nina, caught in the increasingly suffocating web of Sonny Corinthos's underworld dealings and her own deteriorating relationship with Willow, was contemplating another ill-advised intervention in the name of maternal redemption. Ava, sipping her espresso with the kind of detachment that comes from surviving her own catastrophic decisions, cut straight to the heart of the matter. "Let it breathe," she advised, voice soft but firm. "If you chase her too hard, you'll push her even farther away. Let the wound air out. You can't cauterize everything with love. Especially not when love is what hurt them to begin with." Nina listened, but whether she absorbed the advice was another matter. Ava had seen this pattern before, a woman desperate to repair something broken, too blinded by guilt to understand the damage her very presence might cause. Still, Ava couldn't walk away. Not entirely. A part of her saw too much of her own past in Nina, the longing, the impulsiveness, the regret, and maybe, just maybe, she hoped someone else's happy ending could still be salvaged even if hers never would be. Meanwhile, across town, another storm was quietly gathering. Christina Corinthos Davis, watching her brother Michael from a distance, felt the gnawing rise of dread. Though the two shared little in common beyond blood, Christina had always sensed when Michael was on the verge of doing something reckless. And lately, he was showing all the signs: brooding silences, secret phone calls, a constant presence at the Quartermain estate, and a growing bitterness that reminded her too much of Sonny in his darkest seasons. Pulling Michael aside at Rice Plaza, Christina didn't hold back. "Whatever you're planning, you need to stop. You think this is all about protecting your family, but you're becoming someone you won't recognize in the mirror. And by the time you realize it, it'll be too late." Michael didn't respond, not directly. His jaw tightened, his gaze fixed somewhere far away, maybe at the past he couldn't escape, or the future he was desperate to reshape. Christina walked away without pressing him further, knowing she'd planted a seed. Whether it grew into reason or rebellion was out of her hands now. Back at the hospital, Willow Corinthos stood before a modest gathering in the staff break room. The air was thick with curiosity and polite tension, as few expected anything more than a brief statement. But Willow, never one to speak unless it mattered, had resolved that it was time to reclaim her voice. The cancer survivor and nurse, once defined by the men in her life and the tragedies that found her, was about to turn a corner that surprised everyone. "I'm stepping away from the hospital for a while," she announced, her voice steady but heavy with resolve. "I'm going to focus on advocacy work, patient rights, especially for mothers who feel unheard in the system. I've been there. I know what it feels like to not be seen. That has to change. And I want to be part of that change." A few scattered claps followed, but the real reaction came after: hushed whispers, knowing glances, even admiration. Willow had faced death and betrayal, but now she was choosing purpose. For Michael, who had entered the room just moments before the announcement, the words hit like a thunderclap. She was moving forward, with or without him. At the Quartermain mansion, Tracy Quartermain stood in front of the fireplace, her arms crossed, her jaw clenched. Cornered, that's how she felt, though she'd never admit it aloud. The SEC investigation into ELQ's offshore accounts had taken a turn she hadn't expected, and now Ned, or Eddie, depending on the day, was threatening to vote against her in the next board meeting. Worse, Brooke Lynn had caught wind of the potential financial irregularities and was asking questions Tracy didn't want to answer. For all her ruthlessness, Tracy had always managed to keep her grip on power by staying one step ahead. But now, with Michael withdrawing his support, Drew whispering about new leadership, and even Lois giving her the cold shoulder, she felt the walls closing in. She was no stranger to being a target, but this felt different. This felt like the end of an era. Unless, of course, she found a way to turn the game in her favor again. And Tracy Quartermain never folded, not even when the deck was stacked against her. As the week draws to a close in Port Charles, each of these stories, Emma and Gio's unexpected spark, Nina's fragile hope, Christina's heartfelt warning, Willow's bold transformation, and Tracy's rising desperation, form the pieces of a larger puzzle. The city pulses with the energy of decisions not yet made, alliances not yet tested, and betrayals not yet revealed. But in true General Hospital fashion, the ripples of today will become the shockwaves of tomorrow.